welcome to the very special New Year's edition of How China Works. I'm Brendan Davis.
And I'm Ying Li.
And today we're doing something kind of special for you. We're taking you inside the lab, also known as my living room. This is how we do the show. And this specifically is how we do the show, right? This is a normal setup, like at least the planning of the show.
Yeah. I'm always in this position looking at you and brainstorming, arguing.
Some arguing
fighting sometimes.
Some arguing happens. Some arguing happens. But we sit here and we figure stuff out. And when we do the interviews with the guests, we pop over to the table over there.
Yep.
But we thought it would be fun just to sit how we kind of chat anyway.
It's life. It's life.
Yeah, this is how we really do it. So I'm excited to know, what do you think were some of the highlights of 2019 for us? And we, of course, covered a lot of topics. We had a huge range of guests. What were some of your highlights? And then ask me the same question, please.
Yeah. Before I answer that particular question, I have so much in my mind.
Sure.
But before particularly we go to the highlights of our show this year, I'd like to remind myself, at least, including you and our dear audience, of why we do what we do with How China Works, because we've been going so far, right? It's been a year and a few months.
Yeah, it's about a year and a half since we started brainstorming.
Right.
We put about 2 months in of prep before we started releasing shows in November of last year. So yeah, it's about a year and a half.
It's a long journey. It's more like, but it's really fun for this whole process. And the reason every single time we produce a new show, we remind of ourselves why we do what we do, and why we talk about how China works, and most importantly, what are the keywords always coming up to us whenever we want to, produce and give of the best for our audience. Seriously, the keywords hasn't fade away from me, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And what do those stand for? She's got a list. She's very specific. This is why we're a good team. I'm much more amorphous, and she's very specific.
I say 1, we don't forget why we do, which is we are bridge. We are a cross-cultural bridge.
Mm-hmm.
For what?
East meets West for the world to understand China and Chinese to go global.
And for bringing more culturally intelligent thought leaders to showcase what this moment of world look like. And to bring this diversity, this diverse viewpoints from everywhere around the world, right? To build that bridge. And we also know that building a bridge is not an easy job. It takes more than just one goal. It takes probably 2 sides of equation to be able to build that bridge.
At least, yeah.
And the 2 sides are not necessarily incompatible in a way or another, right?
Sometimes they don't understand each other at all. Sometimes there's overlap. Sometimes there's synchronicity, but it's hard to tell sometimes.
I like to emphasize on that part, how to build a bridge. It's just from 2 sides. We have a common goal, being closer to each other and closer, and adjust our angles and adjust our position, attitude, way of approaching things, so that we can actually essentially compromise on a certain thing, a matter, and then we build that bridge.
Find that common understanding, if that's possible.
Yeah. And number 2 we have is we are in season 2 right now. Season 2. And 2 co-hosts.
2 very different co-hosts, in case you haven't noticed.
Yeah, me, Ying Li, also known as Jade Eagle, Yu Ying, and you.
Hollywood Panda is what I've been called more than once, and so we're going with that. It's
dear
kind of
audience.
the tongue-in-cheek, but, fairly. I've been on keto. I'm down 7.5 kilograms in the last 4 weeks. I'm very happy.
I can't believe
I only
that.
have 35 more to go, but it's...
I can't believe that.
Well, for me, my goal... 1,000 miles per step kind of thing.
That's great. I kind of want to gain a little bit more weight.
If I could trade, I would, but...
Yeah, 2 shows, and second year we've been doing this. We are going to have a lot of new wonderful shows in the coming year, but this in the second season of our show, we have two product lines or two directions. Again, the first is to watch China globally or watch China objectively. 世界客观看中国. Remember that we always bring people from outside of China to talk about China. Well, it doesn't really matter how deep engagement they have with China, but they are the bridge builders who have done something and to help and Chinese go global. And we're really, really grateful for that. Second line is, again, like in today's world, we can't really understand China fully without hearing the Chinese opinion about this particular country, the culture and markets.
Sure.
Even though it's difficult, but it's really increasingly possible to have Chinese speakers and those Chinese young thought leaders brought up in China, grew up in this particular culture, get immersed in a different culture, and coming back to explain and to engage, to build a win-win. And that's really what we're looking for. And we just had our Chinese speaker in the last episode.
We did. Next week, Lu Gong, who is the founder of TechNode here in
Yes,
China.
check that out, please.
Yes, we're excited for that episode, and that was really, that exemplifies what we're trying to do. These things and the other things that you're about to tell us. What's next on our list of 5?
Yeah, the third,
third,
we
yeah.
just mentioned.
Number 3rd.
Yes.
I'm a native English speaker. Can you tell?
We mentioned already in the beginning, East meets West, cultural intelligence and diversity thinking. We always follow that principles because that's very, very important to us in order to make our show work, not just for us, I think, for our dear listeners as well. And number 4, right, we're trying to bridge gaps because it's very important. We build a bridge what? Where there is a gap, there is a bridge. There should be a bridge.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
So we mentioned a lot about bridging the understanding gap between the East and West. We're trying. We're not totally, we're not like 100% in a way like capable in saying we know everything.
I always, when I tell somebody about the show, I'm sure you have your way, you sort of shorthand it. And what you're saying and what you're in the middle of explaining, and I mean, these are all like the talking points for a possible guest, and here's the value. When I'm just talking with someone very casually and say, goes to show how China works, and if I detect any resistance, like if they're like, oh, like what do you think you know it all? It's like we do not think we know all the answers, but we do believe that we know the right questions to ask. And along the way, we're having people to help find some answers, at least some things that work. And of course, we're learning enough. But asking the right questions is more important than having the right answers. And a lot of people have said that in different ways, and it's very true in this dynamic.
Yeah,
even just with me and you. Now we had to ask each other the right question to elicit the thought.
It's very important.
We'll use different words to get at something, but the thoughts when they emerge was, oh, okay, I can get that.
In a way, the purpose of our show is to try to fill the gaps. Right, there's a lot of gaps between the East and West, obviously, and gaps between the past and the future, the modern, the known and unknown, and the superficial and the authentic. Again, it's a very difficult job to do in today's world. We're not saying we can 100%. We're not saying that we are the best speakers around the world to share this, to provide these particular bridges for that gaps, but we're trying to bring diverse voices to fill that gaps, and people who deeply care about filling that gaps or bridging that gaps on our show, and it's very important to us.
Absolutely. And what's the 5th?
Our number 5. Number 5 are the 5 keywords we keep hearing again in our show, right? So you tell me what
are our favorites?
China, 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 China.
China,
No, we're not saying
China,
we're not doing
yeah,
that.
We're not doing. Yes,
First,
we'll avoid the U.S. political.
yeah, China, globalization,
Yeah.
modernization, humanity, and technology.
Mhm.
I put like technology in the first one and the humanity at
Right.
the fifth
Right.
one, because we are entering an age. It's a critical moment for us to think about the meaning of those keywords
Mhm.
and to bring people to be able to explain, articulate about their engagement story with it.
Mhm.
And I can go on and on about this, but our dear listeners, if you follow us for this whole almost 90 episodes of content,
Yeah.
you will understand what we truly want to share, and we keep carrying our mission, and we'll try our best.
Absolutely. It's so much fun to do this, and I've learned so much personally. I know you've learned so much. Some of that learning is direct to us from the guests, and some of it's in our interchange. And so my original question, which I kind of skipped our intro, that's on me. We talked about this a little beforehand. Sorry about that. But back to the original question. What are some of the highlights for you? Some of the things that were the most impactful for you or most thought-provoking? We've had so many interesting guests. I mean, we had about 45. We had about 40 guests this year in a couple of sort of solo shows. We had 42, 43 guests. It's kind of amazing. Where do we start? Like, what are a few of them that stand out?
I'll start with one word, and then I can elaborate from there.
Okay.
That particular word is pattern. Pattern is pattern.
Like the general pattern? A
Pattern.
Sorry.
As a category.
Okay.
As something, the essence you extract
right.
from a lot of phenomena sharing in common, right? Mm-hmm. This pattern, what I call is, there are people who are equipped with this particular capability in bridging cultural differences. There are people who are actually with that particular empathy and understanding, not just their own culture, but a culture very different from theirs, to be successful in their life and career, not just a career. And I felt that a lot of our speakers are happy people. And if you truly talk to them, on and off, and before and after, you feel they have a special capability in making their life more, not just fulfilled and happier, by being able to explain and the differences and similarities between Chinese culture and their cultures.
Right.
So I feel like this pattern are signaling something. For me, it's a trend. For me, it's more like something in the future we all of us are looking forward to having this particular state of life.
Being
right?
more savvy and sophisticated about understanding the other cultures. Yeah, it's an essential human skill, especially moving as we just keep on evolving and moving, and the world's getting flatter and smaller in a lot of ways.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to understand that we can communicate with anybody in an instant, basically, as long as they have the technology between us. But understanding them is still the challenge, and that will remain the challenge, but it's going to get more possible to do it. You also have to have the empathy, which you always talk about. You have to have the empathy where you care, where you want to learn. You want to learn about other people, and you want to understand the world outside your own backyard. So,
one of the ways to bridge the gaps we mentioned in the previous 4 gaps is to getting people into a thinking, a reflecting mode, where people can really think about, in the existing culture where I got brought up or growing in right now. I mean, this not just like culture, it could be environment on internet. The tribes and community that actually you are in could be with a lot of walls, 墙壁, right? A lot of walls around you.
One of the themes that I've noticed is related to this, which is that the people who were engaged in this, you mentioned that you happened to list your five, like you listed technology fifth, but then you said, I might flip that and put that first. I've noticed something really interesting. There's a lot of talk about how Silicon Valley's lost its soul if it ever had one. And I think it did have one. I know a lot of people there, as do you. But it is interesting that in China especially, the people who we get to know who are very involved in tech and entrepreneurship and tech specifically, they tend to be these more holistic thinkers. Many of them are educated abroad as well as in China. And often they've worked overseas and been part of something, even if they were, sort of lower to mid-tier person in another, but established venture. And they come back to China, and then they're able to apply all this perspective into doing something else, whether it's helping one of the established companies here or they're launching their own startup or something in between. And it's fascinating to me because, again, the idea that, and it's a cliche in the West that Silicon Valley has lost its soul if it ever had one. Again, I'm defending them a little, but I get where this comes from. And in here, it seems that the technologists, especially the younger technologists, you're always talking about Chinese youth, and we don't mean kids' youth. We really mean young adults. But the young Chinese entrepreneurs, they've come up with like some social awareness. They're what I like to call hashtag China woke. They're like woke with Chinese characteristics, where they're thinking about the world and the environment, and they care about these things besides just money, because they're one step removed from the fear of scarcity of the previous generation. Their mom and dad had to basically hunt, gather, and kill because they're trying to build the country. They're trying to build something. And then our current younger people's grandparents, they lived through the hard times. And so this younger generation has the luxury of growing up where, okay, we know we're not going to starve. We got food figured out. We can do all the other basic things of living and stuff. And so we can focus on sort of self-actualization, like doing what your heart is impelled to do. And that's the key to China's next stage of evolution. So people talk about, when is China sort of on par with the West? And Lu Gang was talking about how creativity is still the area where there's a lag. Yeah. Well, this is how you get it. Yeah. You get a critical mass of people who are they're piloting their own ship, or at least in their head, they're assembling things in a way that's unique to them. Yeah. And they're not just following a trend or doing a job because it's safe. Yeah. And that's the future. That's why I'm optimistic about the future.
That's definitely one of the patterns. Paradigm.
We do this all the time. We find the tricky word, and I learn stuff all the time. My Chinese is buhao. Horrible.
I really like it when you pronounce like that way. That's one of the patterns we find when it comes to the younger generation. And these days, I engage with a lot of them, the young people, entrepreneurs, and the graduates, and also the people who have all kinds of creative projects. Like, speaking of one of the guests, Joy Yang, right? Yang Zhouyi.
Yeah.
And he's just 70 years old, and he's the youngest
guest, and one of the wisest,
and he's a Chinese boy and have big dreams of changing and reforming the education, not just China, worldwide in his mind. Can you imagine in 10 years he grew up and become sort of, a leader in this entrepreneurial world or this particular culture?
Absolutely.
We don't know what his future looks like yet, but one thing we are very sure that he represents a type of generation, a type of mind in that age, with everything that is popping up. And his talent and his capability really shocked me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite guests is actually an old friend, and you know him longer than I do, but our friend Steve Hoffman, who was kind of in the earlier days of us doing this show. Captain Hoff in Silicon Valley, founder of Founderspace, and he's been a founder of several successful startups previously, is what led him to found Founderspace, because it was his blog of how I did it that he then decided to make more official and build a community, and then it's a company, now it's global. And part of what's really inspiring about Steve Hoffman is the fact that he's been the one to successfully, specifically in his sector, the incubator accelerator space to bring his Western incubator accelerator model to China successfully. Like Y Combinator was here, they're out, right? You've had these other big brands that have kind of tried to come to China, even with some of the smartest people, and funding's not an issue. But what Steve's done with Founders Space, and he had a best-selling business book here in China.
He had his second one.
Right, he has his new one is out now. What's the new one called?
I think is
sorry, Steve, I can't remember.
Yeah, something like getting through the winter, for the entrepreneurs. I think it's really about helping the entrepreneurs to be able to survive in when the economy is getting slower and the worldwide, and how entrepreneurs can face it.
Right, and to wrap up my point about Steve is that he's done it by merging his Western self with Eastern style. Yes. Where he is an example of someone who really, and he does giant keynote speeches on this at events as well, and talking about the story of Founder Space. So he's talked about this to millions of people actually. But what's always interesting for me when we do catch up on something is just how tuned in he is to all the cultural, often subtle things, often really subtle things that are super important. They may, if it's missing, that's maybe not the end of the world. But if you get something wrong, it may seem so small here, but somehow it kills the vibe. It kills the deal. It's something about they can't relate to you, or they can't trust you, or you don't respect them, and it's very delicate. But he has mastered that, and he's so loved and respected by his Chinese colleagues because he exemplifies that.
And one thing I think he balanced very well, he's an example for that is he keeps his Western part of his life and his nature and his capacity and leadership. As you can see probably very clearly from the way he talks and the way he engages, pretty bold, right? In many ways, that is, we in no way consider like a Chinese growing up.
You're not going to mistake him for do that, right? Beijing Ren.
Yeah, not at all. But at the same time, if you watch his engagement with a lot of Chinese community, like especially this year, I happened to meet him in several events here. He's the only foreigner, in China, in that particular setting with could be hundreds or 2,000 people, and he could easily, he feel comfortable. He feel not just comfortable. He's encouraging himself to be that kind of type of moment to be with Chinese people and to feel what it does look like to be the only non-Chinese in a very even traditional Chinese cultural setting, right?
Absolutely.
And that's when you're thinking, wow, what worked, right?
Yeah, and because of that type of, this applies to a lot of businesses, but especially because his is related to finance and technology. The fact is that the government always has a hand in making sure that stuff is on track and there's nothing funny going on. And so his engagements could be with like the young scrappy entrepreneur, like the kid in the garage, essentially, for the metaphor from the Valley, but he can be dealing with a young entrepreneur who's maybe super Western and went to school, or at least has a sense of the world. And then he's dealing with established, like, bureaucratic folks who are here, like, holding, they're doing the protective thing for the country, and then everybody in between. And then often, like, the money people or some combination of people who have to float between both worlds. So Steve's able to make all that work. It's a really cool skill set. Let's do one more. Who's one other person who sort of stands out to you as one that you really learned from, or you think is worth shining a light on? We could do this for literally every guest. We could talk about things we loved about the show.
I'll think about two.
Okay. I'll give you the second
female
one.
Guest, actually.
Okay.
I thought about them a lot, especially most recently. One is Fu Han, Sister Fu Han. So what I think she represents most is the civic ambassador and culture ambassador in China, more specifically here in China, when the expats coming around the world to China. And she was able to not just make friends with them, but also help them to, live a relatively happier life and satisfied life. But also the most magic thing about her is to have this one, the magic one, to make them really successful in one way or another, right? So
Yeah.
we also interviewed Mark Levine.
Mark Levine, yeah.
Yeah, and they both are such a compatible
they're a
partners,
great
right?
duo of
So we're
business
thinking
partners
about
and
why
friends.
this work and how, and now she's selling airplanes.
Yeah,
Such a tremendous
she's an
story.
entrepreneur of many colors. She's
So
very
you see,
interesting.
you cannot really put entrepreneurial at the first.
It's not just in like a little
Yeah,
small
yeah,
little
or
box over
cross
here.
cultural, or is because she's more, first of all, equipped with this cultural intelligence or capability engaging with different cultures, or it's because her like innate entrepreneurial nature or self to make it work. But it's perfect combination.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Right?
And she, not to again, this is my Western side, and Chinese might be too modest to say this, and I'll say it acknowledging that it's not meant to be immodest, but Fu Han was, because of working with us, and you know her very well, and I've gotten to know her a few times on a few things, and she had me submitted. I got to attend this dinner. I was appointed as a distinguished special foreign expert by
Good
the
for
Beijing
you.
version of the Global Talent Exchange Association. So I have like a 5-year appointment. I hope I don't have any homework I have to do, but I think I basically am an advisor on call if there's a situation where I could help. But so, I mean, I have a very nice, certificate. It was a lovely ceremony. But the more meaningful thing is it's an example of how she's plugged in to truly bridging China with the world. Because, I mean, there were
Again.
people up there. There were Americans. There were people from African countries. There was Romanian. There were like people from all these different cultures who have some engagement with China that's meaningful. And so this is a way to say we welcome your specific talent. We're trying to figure out what mine is, but improv comedy maybe possibly is my best bet. But the fact is that it acknowledges your unique thing that makes you you. We want that here,
Yeah.
and we see it, and we recognize it, and we appreciate it, and she's so savvy about
Yes,
that.
if you listen to our show with Mark, and also the episode with her, right, at La Bookworm with Isabel, right? That's a tremendous experience for both of us, for
Absolutely.
everyone present there. And the whole story made me think about, you just mentioned about bridge, right? She served the perfect bridge between China and many different cultures. But there's also a very important bridge between the old and young and the past and future.
Right.
Because when I say the old and young, she's young actually. And but look, she could really engage very well with people from different generations, from the younger ones to the one.
Well, one of her best friends just turned 104.
Yes, can you imagine
Isabel
that,
was at
right?
the event. We sang happy birthday
So
to Isabel.
that
at the
particular
event.
cultural intelligence, what I also call generational diversity intelligence, and the most importantly right now, with the particular documentary that she did, right, with
Right.
Isabel, she was able to break the gap between the past and the future.
Yeah.
Because what we saw, if she didn't do so, right, if a lot of older people here in
stories,
China
you gotta
made
get 'em.
tremendous historical achievements and help for China. The people coming from around the world, coming to China in very, very early time. Think about Isabel living in China for over 100 years, right? What does that mean, right? If there's a lot of people have that, how could the stories could be kept without entering a social media world like as we can do podcasting these days? And she was able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, she did a great job, and we've we'll relink it. We'll link episodes to the people we're talking about here specifically, and of course you can search on HowChinaWorksPodcast.com. You can search and find all the episodes, and we have tags. So if you're curious about something, you should be able to find something on a given topic just by searching that. But the documentary, documentaries are one of the things I do, and she did. It's fantastic.
Without actually having the particular education, right? She just did by herself.
She just figured it out, and that's what really struck me with it, because I'm sure she had professional people on the camera and whatnot to make sure that the technical part is dialed in, so they know how to frame a shot, they know the important shots to get in between.
Right.
But in terms of the questions she asked and the way it's put together.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask the right questions and shoot the right things, then you
Mhm.
can't put it together the way she did it.
Right.
Right. And I know this from having spent years in editing rooms doing exactly this, that you have to get it right on the front end. Okay, so you have one other female you wanted to specifically name check here.
And her name is Vida.
Yes. Oh, Vita. Vita's so cool.
Yeah, I would say that Vida is in a mixed culture marriage, right? And she has lived in United States for over, I guess, about 20 years, I guess, remember?
Yeah.
And now she's mostly in Beijing and also like New York.
In New York, yeah. I think she lives in the city.
I
if
think the
don't-
passion she
mistaken.
has is quite fascinating to me, which is bridging the East and West cultural understanding with home culture, with the culture, with the education for helping the future generation to understand things from the kitchen, things from home, right? And she served a perfect example as it's not she's not trying to teach everyone to become a mom in the modern age, but what I find specialty she has is to be able to really provide very hands-on programs for women, like not just housewife women, but also women in different stages, married women, and also kids, to be able to really have a physical engagement, what it feels like kitchen culture and home decoration in the East and West. That's quite fascinating to me.
Me too, because from a Western perspective, it almost seems like, oh, is this an anachronistic throwback? And, the old housewife idea. China's development's been so fast that there's some of these foundational things that, frankly, in the West, again, it's changed now, but at least when I was a kid, way back in the day, even we didn't have a traditional family, but there was still some version of this.
Right.
And that's very lost here. You often have two working professional parents and everybody's going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to use the home and specifically the kitchen and the lessons learned. I mean, there's practical stuff. Here's how you make this thing, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
It's about how do you build bonds within the family and within the community using some pretty fundamental precepts. And she's teaching young kids as well as young adults and even, older folks who don't have connection to that to make it work.
Yeah, another two things impressed me most about her. The first one is the amount of empathy and understanding from her, on particularly about why it is necessary to build that education in China, right? It's more about mindset. It's more about improved understanding about what to be a responsible person starting from home, right? Home culture, parenting are the first steps for the kids, for the children to be a human, and then schools. And the nuances she grabbed, it's very subtle and important. And she could exemplify, right? She hosted this international 女主人 cultural festival I participated, co-organized in Shanghai, and where she brought up her friends, like her age and her generation, to come talk about the challenges arise from the Chinese family, and how to solve it with courage and leadership. And I, of course, brought a lot of our influencer speakers, female speakers, to be there to talk about what the younger female generation from China think about the world, engage with the world, like Africa, Middle East, and everywhere. And that's fascinating. And she's going to host another round of this cross-cultural celebration festival in all parts of China, actually, not just Shanghai, Beijing, but also to many other parts, the second, third tier. Eventually, I believe she will be able to bring the culture down to the corners of this East and West cultural tour to every part of China.
Well, I think that is a fantastic mission for her, and we have our own mission. What would you say? What's I feel like I'm interviewing Ying. What's sort of the short answer of as you look at to 2020? What's kind of your short? Where are we going with this show? And I'll have some things to add too. But where, from your point of view, where is the show heading, and what are you excited about in terms of our as we continue to refine what we're doing here? Frankly, what are you looking forward to in the new year?
I have lots of thoughts in my mind.
Oh, I know you do. That's why I said. Now lay it out there. Come on. Whatever's good for you.
Globalization. Globalization is so important. Even people from all parts of the world right now are having all kinds of discussion about whether globalization work even, right? But let's don't even
That's really a settled question.
Yeah, let's don't really think about the reverse possibilities, because deeply, if we get educated, if we grow up in certain culture, or grow up in the West, or grow up in a very engaged in a very, very different cultures, we understand that globalization works. And let's just think about make globalization work again, and how to make that possible. Right now,
make globalization great again.
Make globalization great again.
There's your slogan, Democrats.
Me growing up in China, and fish out of water come back to the water, and maybe in the future we engage in different waters, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
But essentially, I have a great hope for our show next year. We will cover the stories, examples, case studies of the exactly thought leader and the leader from the entrepreneurial world, technology world, innovation world, to really bring the diverse voice from those sectors to really discuss how to make globalization great again. And importantly,
let's not really do that, but
and importantly,
that could be an inside joke for the show.
Yeah, thank you. We hope our listeners from around the world really support us in a way, even stronger way, because we wouldn't be able to go far without your help and support and comments and your feedback.
Totally.
First, for one of the ways to really help us and support us is to give us genuine and feedbacks about what do you think of the show, and how you think we could make it better. Globalization is one that we have gathered a lot of interests actually in helping the Chinese companies, in getting the Chinese in covering stories about the Chinese company going global. And there's many angles: technology angle, business innovation angle, and cultural exchange angle, many ways. We'll focus more on that in the future to cover in the globalization process for the Chinese, not just the young entrepreneurs, but more and more Chinese people will go global, that's for sure. So we have great faith on that. And we also want to support in any way you could to help us in maybe connect us with a great guest. A great speaker you thought will make us very clear about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing. If you think someone around you could make a perfect guest, don't hesitate to contact us.
We'll give you we don't want to make people think we're done. I have one more thing to say, but we'll give you the call to action, they call it in the marketing business, at the end, where we tell you where to go and what to do. And this is a dynamic. We got serious mode, and you got
sometimes
you got
he's
goofball
like
here.
Sometimes he's like teasing me all the time, and sometimes I'm very serious, right?
She's very serious, and that's
I
good.
could be really serious this.
You totally can.
Sometimes more serious.
See, can you tell how serious she is? But you are. Just because you have fun doesn't mean that you're not serious. You touched on one of my 2 things, is the global aspect of this. The fact that we have more opportunity coming up. When we were in the West Coast in the U.S. this year, we did the event at UC Berkeley at the Haas Business School. We did the event at Stanford. And of course, we did the event at One Piece Work in downtown San Francisco, these How China Works Live events. So this next year, I'm excited, although because of my making movies schedule and her traveling and speaking schedule, we may not be in the same room. We'll probably be in the same room even less than we are now, which is not a lot. It used
This
to be
is
a lot.
historical.
This is for the history books. We started. It was just she practically lived here. She went home to her home at night, and we were like locked in all day, every day, sometimes 7 days a week to get this going. But I'm excited for the bigger, more global opportunities, and we're both. I'm moderating a panel at the Horasis Global Meeting in Cascais in Portugal, and I believe you're on tap to be part of this event. We were at the one in Vegas, which was great for us to participate separately, but we were both there, and we recorded a lot of How China Works. We had a lot of that happening as well. But so I'm excited for the actual global out in the world to increase for us. And I'm also, this is a related note because of the scheduling, our different, schedules outside of doing this show that I mentioned, the fact that moving forward, you find yourself in a lot of rooms, in a lot of events. You go to events, you travel, you're going to be on a panel or see a speaker or be a speaker with other speakers. And so you find you find yourself with a lot of people who would be fantastic guests on our show. I'm not there. And the timing is the timing. And especially if I'm not in China and you're doing this here somewhere, connecting or looping me in by Skype is not really that practical. And it's a better conversation if it's in person, at least. So moving forward, we'll be doing more shows where Yingying's going to start to do the interviews one-on-one in more cases, but I will get my thoughts in by talking to her ahead of time. Okay, please ask them these sorts of things, and we'll collaborate on the questions, but she'll be doing the conversation, and then I will continue to do like the intro and the outro, where I introduce it, and then I sort of do a wrap-up, and also likewise, I get her thoughts for the wrap-up of what did she think about all this. And so we each will be helping to represent each other, but I think it'll be great for you. It'll be exciting. And I am particularly excited because it just opens up the possibility of people we get to talk to.
Yeah.
Because you'll be able to be more portable, and that trusty microphone right there. Wherever we got these mics, we can do this show basically.
Yeah, and we really want to hear from our audience.
Yes.
Because moving forward, we don't know what 2020 will look like for all of us, but as long as we stay together, and as long as we remember everything we do here, we remember the mission and the change we want to make, the good value we want to create, we will make How China Works work.
That's the goal. And to help this, everything that you were saying, please visit howchinaworkspodcast.com. Once you click the inner page that has a bunch of photos, you'll see our homepage, and you can navigate everywhere else from there. Of course, like a website normally works. You'll notice that we've had people say, how could we support the show? Well, yes, please comment, like, share it, subscribe in your podcast app that you listen to. You don't subscribe on the website. You can contact us if you have feedback or thoughts, or you think you'd be a great guest, or you have someone. And then we also do have a PayPal and a WeChat button. There's a PayPal donate button and then a WeChat QR code. And although PayPal goes to me and WeChat goes to her, this is for this show. So anything that comes in that way, we pool it, we divide it,
We can actually help the show to go further. And we
Absolutely.
also want to really cover the expense of the show seriously, because we actually, both of us are really putting a lot of efforts into the show in order to be able to keep doing it. And we really need your support.
Absolutely. Maybe next year, we won't be recording this on our laptops, on our webcams. Maybe we'll have actual cameras.
Yeah.
Well, Yingying, it's been a pleasure. I know you have to get out of here and go do other things. And it's New Year's Eve.
Oh,
As we record this,
I'm getting emotional right now.
We'll put this out on the 3rd. This will be Friday. But we're recording yours. What's your New Year's resolution? Do you have one yet?
I have many.
Yeah.
But
I figured, but I mean that with love, but I figured. What are some of your New Year's resolutions that you would share? Like, or be general if you don't want to be specific. If you don't want to take the magic out of the wish.
World peace.
Spoken like a Miss Universe.
Oh my gosh.
Very nice.
Oh,
Very
okay.
nice. Very
Please
nice.
don't take it as a joke.
No,
I'm
no,
serious.
No.
I was really serious.
I sincerely
hope
that you're correct with that. Although I'm tending to bet the other way, unfortunately. I hope she's right.
we have a lot of work
Yeah.
to hope for and to do, and let's just hope for the best for the 2020 and stay with us as long as we stay together.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
how China works,
Yeah.
and that it will work.
Yeah. And mine is, I'm going to co-sign that as my global ambition. I like that. And the personal one is just that I'm strict on keto. And so this time next year, there's a lot less of me to love. But I'm Brendan Davis.
And I'm Ying Li.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you listening.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.